How's it going, brothers? This is Justin with Masonic Improvement. Today I want to follow up on my last video I made about buy-in. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, please be sure you hit subscribe so you can follow me as I post more videos on a weekly basis. That's the best way to keep up with all my updates and everything that's going on. So anyway, in the last video, I talked about buy-in and we discussed what it was and why it was important, but I didn't really go into a whole lot of detail on how to really build buy-in. I mentioned having meetings, and you can do surveys to collect information, and that's a great way to do it, but it's the most basic way of doing it. But something you may have thought of and you may have wondered after you watched the video, what if you want to make a change, if you want to push the lodge in a certain direction that isn't necessarily on anybody's radar already? What if you really think a program would be good, or if you know it will be beneficial to the lodge, and you don't want to just spring it on everybody because you won't have buy-in, but how do you get that into the lodge? Or better yet, how do you create buy-in for these programs you'd want to implement? So in the last video, I talked about an imaginary worship master who created a new education program. Basically, we're going to meet once a week and start doing practice, and it's going to improve all the ritual. And he just basically just made a declaration. He just kind of mandated it. You know, everyone needs to start showing up. We're going to do this, and nobody shows up because there was no buy-in. But let's look at it from another situation. And this is actually where the point of the video is going. If you want to introduce an idea and you want that buy-in, if you want it to have the longevity that we discussed, and if you want it to have the support of the majority of the stakeholders in your lodge, what you need to do is find some way to generate buy-in. Or one of the best ways that I found to do this is just through Masonic Education. For example, at my old lodge, when I first joined, it was kind of like the Masonic musical chairs. I posted a blog post about something like this before, where basically you just go through the chairs, and before you know it, you're sitting in the east, regardless of your capability or your leadership skills. And this applied to every chair. And I saw what it was doing to the lodge. It was actually detrimental because you're getting people in leadership positions that had no business being there. They're strictly there because of the merit of the fact that they had sat there for a year. So I started doing some education during lodge, and it wasn't even long educational pieces. It was just short, 2-3 minutes, sometimes up to 5 minutes long, and it will start slowly introducing these ideas. Basically suggesting the ideas that maybe just going through the chairs isn't enough. Maybe we need to start looking at our leadership a little more closely. We need to be a little bit more selective about who we're putting in chairs and mindful of what office we put them in, because we need to understand the fact that they may one day sit in the east. And it doesn't matter how many good years you've had in the past if you have one bad year, because it'll undo everything. So you need to be really careful about who you put places. And it was basically just ideas like this. And over a period of time, I started generating buy-in on this idea that maybe we need to be a little more critical of who we put in offices. And so that's just one example. And there are other things like that I've done. And you may have even done this without really realizing what you're doing. But that's the goal. Because a lot of times people may like ideas, but they just don't realize it. Or another thing is, people are open to ideas, but they need more information. So if you're building more, if you're presenting them with this information before you suggest the program or present the idea itself, you're going to find that people are a lot more open to it. And this is especially important to ideas that people are adamantly against. There's some real hot button topics in Freemasonry that if you just throw it out without giving any kind of background or any kind of pre-existing education, that people are just going to just flip out about. Obviously, the two big ones I can think of right now, just off the top of my head, first of all is always dues, and second of all would be like a dress code or something like that. But so if you wanted to introduce higher dues in your lodge, I would suggest, especially if you want to increase it dramatically, you need to be working on getting that support before you even suggest it. And the best way to do that is through education that really emphasizes the importance on having higher quality, and eventually talking about, high quality isn't cheap, but it's worth it. And then you can get to the point, this is what we need to do. And by then, hopefully, if you've been patient about it, if you've been mindful about it, then you can get that goal. So anyway, that's how to generate buy-in, and that's probably the best way that I found. If you have found other ways to do it, please by all means share below in the comments. I'd love to hear it myself, and I'm sure other brethren will benefit from it as well. Anyway, if you liked the video, please be sure you give it a like, and thanks again as always for watching. You have a good day, my brothers.